Thank you so much for being with us today. And we're going to be discussing the latest and greatest, if you will, in automation and Industry 4.0 from the viewpoint of integrators. We'll dive into a discussion that will cover a wide variety of topics, generally focused around the state of the industry and where we see integration going in the future. We'll touch on the status of IoT and digital transformation, expanding data access and insights from the plant floor, data integrity and compliance, the future of mobile SCADA, machine learning and how it works in practice, security, of course, and finally, the next generation of integrators. We're very pleased to have a group of panelists for today's webinar that are very experienced. They're all premier integrators with inductive automation. Let's start with you, JC.
Good morning, Don. Thank you. Again, JC Harrison, work for Raceline and Associates. It's a global leader in engineering and modular fabrication of construction, and primarily in the can making industry. We also service the automotive industry and other food and beverages industries and the alternative gas industry. I've been doing this for almost 30 years and loving it as much as I ever have.
That's great, JC. Welcome. Sam?
Hey there, everyone. My name's Sam Russum. I'm the Director of Smart Manufacturing for Grantech Systems Integration. I've been here for about just over 10 years now. Grantech's primary focus is in the life sciences and food and beverage verticals. And my Smart Manufacturing group is really the software arm of our Industry 4.0 team, where we work with customers to help define their Industry 4.0 vision for the future, help guide our internal teams on how to execute these technology projects, and work to curate the technology market to find the best solutions for our partners and customers.
Thanks, Sam. Chris?
So I'm Chris McLaughlin, SCADA and MES specialist for Vertec, and we are a systems integration firm that provides world-class automation solutions for manufacturing, food and bev, water, wastewater, and energy and utilities, specializing in high-end SCADA and MES projects.
Thanks, Chris. Mo?
Hi, good morning. Mo Moore with Industrial Networking Solutions. We're a distributor of IoT and industrial communications equipment, and we have a specialty service where we essentially help integrators and end users implement IoT solutions like Ignition Edge and customize their IoT gateway solutions to the cloud.
Thanks, Mo. Thanks to all you guys for taking some time this morning. I'm joined today by Travis Cox. He's co-director of sales engineering here at Inductive Automation. So Travis, I know you're probably known by many of these folks, but can you introduce yourself and what you do here?
Yes, thank you, Don. And thanks for having me. So my name is Travis Cox. I'm the co-director of sales engineering here for Inductive Automation. And my team is the solutions arm. And we really focus a lot with our customers on this topic of digital transformation. A lot of the feedback we've gotten from customers over the years have been put into the Ignition software so that people can actually achieve some of the things that we're going to be talking about here today. So as an expert of Ignition and with all that, our team can really assist and help anybody in taking steps to getting, to doing digital transformation.
Thanks, Travis. One of the biggest buzzwords, if you will, that we're hearing lately in the industry is digital transformation. And really, it's no secret that IoT and digital transformation are as big a deal for us here at Inductive Automation. And digital transformation is more than just a buzzword. In fact, it's a total transformation of the way companies collect and use their data. The ARC Advisory Group has a definition of digital transformation as the transformation of industrial products, operations, value chains, and aftermarket services that are enabled through the augmentation of people and knowledge through the expanded use of sensors, data, and analytics. Now, obviously, it has huge potential, but it does seem that many companies are finding the term digital transformation to be maybe a little bit overhyped. Maybe they've fallen into that Gartner trough of disillusionment that they talk about. They might even feel deeply that disillusionment about the idea of going anywhere is really not going to allow them to accomplish anything really meaningful in that area. Honestly, what we've seen at Inductive Automation is that digital transformation, it can really happen. It can lead to massive advantages for companies if they start in the right place. Most companies think about digital transformation starting up in the cloud with all those great cloud services, or up in the IT world, if you will. They sort of go IT down to OT, down to operations technology. What industry experts working in the trenches have found is that for it to really succeed, it has to start in the OT world. It has to go from the bottom up by using operational technology to get data then bringing it up to the cloud, you can build out successful systems that lead to that real transformation. But it has to start with the OT data and tools. So it's important to note that digital transformation really requires at the outset a change in architecture and a change to how you think about building your automation systems. Just as a view of that, if you're using IIoT and MQTT, integrators have been able to start digital transformation that actually works for companies. You'll hear more about that today, but by using our strategic partner modules from Sepasoft and CirrusLink with Ignition, you can actually build a fully functional IoT architecture for your system, leading the way to that digital transformation that's being talked about. So with that, a little bit as a background for the digital transformation world, let's break off into our discussion. I know it's a huge topic, a broad place to start, but really I'd like to just hear from our panelists about their experience with digital transformation. Sort of these kind of questions here. What do you think the state of digital automation is for your industry? What are early or first steps companies can take? That kind of area. And I think I'll start out with you, Mo, and give your thoughts on that.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, so it's been a really exciting couple of years, especially the last year and a half. Our company has seen a real boom in IoT gateway sales and the services because of new protocols like MQTT that take advantage of the TCP/IP stack with all the security necessary. Our company specializes in cellular technologies and remote assets, and so we've really seen that the customers embracing the IIoT space with these new technologies because they're able to take cellular and things like that and really get the throughput, plus the cost savings and the data plan savings using things like MQTT and Ignition Edge to really get the store and forward capabilities, security model, and then information up to the cloud. So it's been a real exciting year for us.
Thanks, Mo. Travis, I think I'm going to go to you next just to get, you've worked with so many folks on developing these new architectures and really trying to leverage the technologies necessary to successfully transform digitally. So can you sort of set the table for us a little bit on digital transformation from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, Inductive Automation had a unique licensing model and technology so that customers can really connect to all their equipment, bring all their data in, and be able to get that data to people. Of course, that hasn't changed. We're just talking about a lot more sensors, a lot more data, a lot more people nowadays. So I like to say that we've kind of done digital transformation from the very beginning. But when you look at it, OT is really, really hard. I mean, there are hundreds or if not thousands of different protocols. There are different networks, from obviously fiber to cellular to satellite. There's aging infrastructure and equipment that we just can't replace very easily. There's a lot out there, and some of it is not secure. Some of it is. We often have different networks for the OT versus IT, and it's just this illusion that from the top down that we're just going to get access to all this data. We're just going to bring it in. We're going to do all these amazing things with it, and that has to be thought of differently, as you said, Don. It's got to be looked from the OT up. We've got to be able to solve our OT problems because the way we've been architecting systems on the OT layer has been the same for the last 20 years. We've got to look at a new architecture, and that is one where we decouple the application from devices, be able to get data into infrastructure. And when we do that, as Mo is alluding to, we can get access to a lot more data. We can effectively use more of that information because in order to really do digital transformation, we have to first get all that data into an infrastructure that we can work with. At the same time, we can't. We have to have an OT system, a SCADA system that maintains operation and works for the operators. We can't turn it into middleware anymore to be able to get data up in higher levels. So I just think that there are some easy steps that we can take, and the first is to really look at all the devices, all the different protocols, and start figuring out how we can, push polling closer to the edge of the network and look at getting data into infrastructure.
Sure. Totally makes sense. So Chris, why don't we add your thoughts to this digital transformation topic?
So Mo and Travis hit on the head. We agree with all of that. The trend that we are seeing is that any new equipment that's coming onto a plant floor, it's all ready connect, plug and play, get onto your network immediately. So we're talking mostly about the existing equipment, legacy controllers, and it's quite an investment. I mean, you have maybe hundreds of different controllers in your lines across the plant, and it is a cost because it isn't just like plug and play from those old controllers, but it is worth every bit of that investment. The technology has come down in price. you can get, gateways, and you can get Wi-Fi devices, and you can get cell modems, and you can get cheap Ethernet cards into controllers, but whatever it takes to get it onto the network. And from that point, using either MQTT or some other mechanism for distributing that information, it's just about laying out that infrastructure first. And then this buzzword of digital transformation is really just the applications that will help build that out.
Thanks, Chris. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, thanks, Don. Again, I agree with what everyone's been saying so far. As far as where digital transformation is, from what I've seen a lot of times in life sciences and food and beverage, is there are things that have held back a lot of companies from really embarking on this journey, whether that be resistance to change due to regulatory reasons, or whether that be just kind of a constant drive towards margins and being more lean. But really, the people that haven't adopted, the companies that haven't adopted this mentality are realizing they've kind of fallen behind, and that it is a journey they need to embark on to stay competitive and keep their advantage. So as they are starting to embark on these digital transformation processes, a couple of the things that we always recommend are to make sure that you're not trying to jump too far along a maturity curve, and to make sure that you are taking the logical next steps to get to the value that you need to, and that you are tying it to business value, that you are really identifying the ways that you can be improving the business and picking the right tools to assist in those areas, instead of just simply finding a tool and trying to see what you can do with it once it's installed there. So doing that type of gap analysis, understanding where the opportunities are, and then picking the right technology to capture that value is one of the most important steps early on in the process.
Thanks, Sam. And JC, how about any additions to the discussion from your perspective?
I think I'll throw out an addition on the preparation that needs to take place for a cloud migration. One of your discussion questions is, what are some of the early first steps? Once, as you're designing your OT and you're working through your OT solution on the plant floor first, the simple decisions like, do I connect directly to a PLC through a module in Ignition, or do I put an edge device now? Whichever step you take, understand with medium to larger companies, there's probably going to be a cloud migration, and that should be considered when you start that process.
Thanks, JC. Let's take a look a little bit now. I appreciate your insights and thoughtful answers on that topic. Let's go a little bit into a little bit more narrow view of some of the aspects that build into this big concept called digital transformation, because the next trend is really pretty closely related. It also involves data and the growing desire for access to more data from more places. Currently, there's a huge demand for more data at every level of the enterprise. Even if companies aren't looking for a total quote-unquote digital transformation, they're often looking for more data to run their company more efficiently and effectively. The fact of the matter is, the majority of companies are only accessing, 10, 15, 20% of the full data they could get access to. So it makes sense that they're looking for more information and accessibility. Even when companies can connect to more of their data, they actually don't even know how to harness it in some cases, or what to do with it once they have it. These small steps, next steps you think that you were talking about, Sam, have to be thought out. And companies need analytics, access data like OEE downtime, track and trace, other tracking tools to use their data so they can get some real insights and analytics. So Ignition, of course, offers a cross-platform solution for increasing data access and productivity. There are many Ignition modules that can generate valuable data insight, such as our integrated MES software modules that monitor things like OEE downtime, track and trace, recipe changeover, and a whole lot more. So this area is very critical, certainly from our perspective, and broadly, I think, in the industry. So from the panelist viewpoint, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this topic. What can be sticking points for many companies? The fact that they're only accessing a small portion of their data. Are there ways to expand that? And once they have access, how do you get more insight to improve their systems? Chris, let me start with you on this topic.
So my two things would be no islands and actionable information. And what I mean by that, the no islands is it's very common to have these silos of your ERP sits over here, your maintenance management sits over there. We have our SCADA or MES platform that does these things over here, but the true power is going to come when these things all start to get merged. Your machines can be telling your maintenance management system to automatically generate tickets or escalate tickets. You can get work instructions down to the line. You can combine your ERP to be providing all of your work orders and rates down to your MES system. So don't let them be silos, first off. And then part of this transformation is, what do you start to do with all of this data? And data for data's sake is worthless. It really takes getting it to the point of having actionable information. And by that, I mean that it is presenting the right information to the right person at the right time with enough context that they can make a decision and act upon it through the system. And so every application that you put out should be focused that way towards not just displaying data, but giving them it in the context to make that decision.
No, that totally makes sense, Chris. Thanks. Travis, you spend a lot of time with customers trying to help them build out proper architectures for getting data access and help improve their insights. So I'd like your kind of overarching view of this area of data access and how it gets to real insight.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with what Chris was saying. I mean, we can't have islands anymore. We definitely have to have interplay or interoperability between these different systems and connect these systems together. And typically what we see is, as far as most of the data out there, is from the platform, from these devices. First of all, we may not be getting to all of it, so we got to solve that issue. But if we do get to more of that data and we bring that in, oftentimes it's thought of really from just the OT, just from the SCADA level. Okay, I'm going to bring it, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, or even potentially MES in that way. And then I have another system who wants access to data, and we say, okay, we'll connect that to the SCADA. We'll make those interoperable. So interoperability, I think you have to really take a step back and look at it. What is the best way to make these things work? Is it best for me to pass information from one system to another through some sort of mechanism like APIs or various standards, or is it better that those systems get access to the direct data that's there? And so that's where the decoupling could really be important when looking at this. We decouple our devices from applications. We can get information to infrastructure, so there could be multiple consumers of that data. With that being said, it's also good that these systems can talk to each other and have the interplay, so that there's a much more connected system. I think it really comes down to planning and looking at, okay, where in our business can we take advantage of this data? Where would it be valuable to us? What kinds of data is valuable to us? And if we look at that, and not just from a SCADA perspective, but from everything, we can start figuring out how we would connect these systems together and the mechanisms by which the data would actually get there. And the other part of that, which I think is probably the most important, is standardization and be able to get context from the data itself. As you said there, Chris, context is incredibly important. And that goes to just process data on the plant floor. If we don't have standardization, if we don't have objects with metadata that has the definitions of the engineering units and the lows and the highs and documentation, and we know what asset it came from, if we don't have that, it's very hard for these different systems to really understand what that data represents, especially if we get that information to cloud for even further insight with machine learning analytics that are there. We've got to be able to look at this holistically and get a plan for how we can really work with it, how we can standardize, how these things all fit together. It's not just these different systems independently by themselves anymore. It's got to be looked at as a whole.
I think that summarizes it really well. I mean, at the end of the day, if you really think about bringing data into infrastructure, you're trying to get to the point where anybody who needs data can have access to the data need, when they need it, how they need it, across any aspect of any area of the organization. And to do that, you have to build out your architectures to accomplish it. And you also have to deal with something which I think is very critical, which is data integrity and compliance. And I think you can see that a huge theme of 2019 is how companies are interacting with their data. But even outside of traditional automation settings, the discussion around data has grown. In particular, we've seen massive shifts in the biotechnology world and pharmaceutical space, with regulations like 21 CFR Part 11, which dictates the way these industries are managing and securing their data. Additionally, no matter what industry you're in, data integrity is crucial to developing effective systems. So there are several ways that you can ensure that your data is in compliance with industry standards. And I want to get some viewpoints from our panelists in this world of data integrity and compliance. So, Sam, I know you work a lot in pharmaceuticals. in life sciences. So maybe I'll ask you for your comments first, and then we'll go to other panelists.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really one of my main points around kind of as we're collecting all of this data and we're starting to use it for more information. It goes back to that, that common idea of garbage in, garbage out, and making sure that that data that you have is actually representative of your process. Now, data integrity in the life sciences world is very much a rigid definition and a very solid thing, where it is around making sure that all the data is correct and attributable and accurate. Involves electronic signatures and validated systems, and it can be a quite a beast to get into, but it's a very important thing and really a foundation for all of the other information that you drive from that data. Now, we can take that lesson from the life sciences industry and apply it to other industries like food and beverage, like oil and gas. Maybe it's not going to have necessarily all the regulatory requirements and boundaries around it, but the idea is still very important and sound in making sure that the information that you have is actually representative of your process. So it usually involves a good amount of gap analysis, a good amount of investigation. A lot of this information is usually in the heads of your operators already. You go to them, you start talking about a specific SCADA screen, they'll point to a number and say, I haven't trusted that number the last 5 years I've been working here, right? There's usually workarounds around it. People still need to get their jobs done. So your people have a lot of this information, and it's up to us to kind of go out there, discover it, and figure out how to remediate it.
Thanks, Sam. But like you said, it applies to multiple industries. I mean, I know that Food Safety Act and all other industries are facing their levels of compliance challenges also. Data integrity crosses the boards. JC, can I give you your thoughts on that topic?
And one thing that we've started doing, we work in the alternative energy natural gas market as well, is we've opened up some of the data to the auditors, either if they're inspecting the quality of the gas or whether they're inspecting the quantity of gas. Either way, they're able to view this data from their desk, from their offices. And so instead of showing up once a week or have an email sent where they ask, show me the data, they already know what that data is. And so conversations in regard around specific aspects of it, but just having the data in the hands of the inspectors and the auditors ahead of time has helped gain confidence in the data before they arrive.
Thanks, JC. Mo, do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, so for INS, one of the things that we've noticed was that with the expansion of Ignition Edge, our background is in making sure the core architecture, starting at the network layer 1, is sound, because without a good communications connection, you don't really have good data, right? So we always start at the layer 1, the layer 2 foundation, where we're really building a solid connection, whether it be cellular SD-WAN technologies or VPN to VPN solutions or TLS communications from the remote edge to the cloud. What we've noticed is that a lot more customers, now that we have an affordable way to put things like Ignition Edge on IoT gateways down at the remote assets, collect the data with store and forward capabilities, and the ability to compare the time sequences using things like MQTT that embed the timestamp inside of the actual packet, and then being able to compress that packet down so you have lower data usage and bandwidth, really has helped a lot more adoption of the technologies for Industry 4.0. People are not as timid to go to that technology because they believe the data integrity and they know that traffic is going to get there. And it's going to be limited traffic. It's affordable over a cellular network, whereas older VSAT communications and things weren't there. And the publish subscribe model, so that you're not constantly just sending data or pulling data from the older polling SCADA models. Now you're only sending data that has changed and needs to be published. And you can just toss in other third-party integrations very easily by throwing in another MQTT engine to get the same data without ever impacting the performance of the control system. So that's kind of the way we've seen, the adoption of the data compliance and data integrity from our end.
No, that totally makes sense. And I know you're using MQTT for some of those build-out architectures. And Arlen Nipper has said more than once from CirrusLink Solutions that you need a single source of truth for your data throughout the entire enterprise, and these kind of architectures allow that. Travis, you're certainly working with this topic a lot. Your thoughts?
Don, you stole the words from my mouth. I mean, basically, what we're all alluding to here is that single source of truth. By pushing, the information, especially these legacy equipment that have polling protocols, by pushing that closer to those legacy devices, having the mapping done once and all the new devices that we bring in, they have the information readily there. We can plug and play, bring in infrastructure. I think that's all really important. That helps with the data integrity of this. I've seen far too many in different industries where there's a lot of people or handoffs of data from one source to another, and that could lead, especially if it's manual, could lead to incorrect data or issues with that. Like for example, with like electronic flow meters, having to go out to a well field and connect up to the equipment and download stuff and handle a file that we then go import somewhere else. There's potentials that we import the wrong file, that we do something different. Whereas if we can have, be able to take advantage of these kind of architectures and edge to be able to get that data directly and pass it up with a protocol that guarantees delivery, that gets it to a system, we have much higher integrity of our data. We know we can trust it. We can then start taking advantage of all the things that Sam and JC were talking about.
Sure. So moving on a little bit to a very timely topic, and I know it has been woven into even some of the things you're saying about data integrity here, but certainly security is critical, and today's integrators have to be vigilant about control system security. Definitely in recent years, attacks against control systems have become more and more common, and now securing your system means protecting against cyber attacks, as well as leveraging SSL, other role-based security protocols, and a whole lot more to secure those systems. This is, of course, in addition to ongoing security required on the plant floor. Fortunately, Ignition was built from the ground up to be secure, and we roll out new features regularly that help systems maintain even stronger security. Just a note, in Ignition 8, for example, we added a single sign-on with existing corporate credentials to make it easy to verify identity. In addition to supporting industry-leading encryption protocols, 8 is compatible with today's federated identity infrastructure and supports two-factor authentication. If your system isn't secure, it's a non-starter. And that's why I think we lead with building security into Ignition. But you as integrators are working with this every day. So let's go to the panelists and talk about this significant topic and hear your thoughts on it. Questions like these here, how does adding new technologies impact system security? What security challenges do you see, being the largest? What practical advice do you have? That kind of stuff. And Travis, set the table for us with security, and then we'll go to our panelists.
Yeah, I mean, security is such an incredibly important topic, and one that everybody has to take seriously. I mean, we certainly here take it seriously with Ignition to make our product as secure as possible, adding features like Don was mentioning there with the federated identity and the single sign-on and just encryption, between the different connection points and so on. Now, all these things are important to make sure that we have the right things in place. But we can only go so far. It takes the customer, to actually implement and have a much more secure environment. And that, we have everything today with digital transformation is all about more connectivity, more things being connected. We used to more or less air gap systems. That's going away. The worlds of OT and IT are colliding and coming together. And IT has security standards that they're using, and OT hasn't necessarily had that for a lot of the areas. And that's changing, but we have to really take a serious look at the OT level, especially in really securing these legacy devices, be able to get data securely into infrastructure, solving those kind of problems, and so that we can feel good about having a solid infrastructure for the OT, and that the data getting into the business is secure. We're using the same standards on both sides. And I think that's why we have taken the steps to implement these tried and true security standards that are out there with our system, so that can be readily available to customers who want to take advantage of it. But it does take them to implement it.
Sure. So Mo, you're dealing with these challenges every day. You talked about how you're building out the basics for your customers' infrastructure, your comments on security, and how you approach those challenges with customers.
Yeah, so a lot of our customers, they have a lot of field engineers. They may have maintenance technicians in the plants and things like that. We're doing a lot in the space of TLS. It's really nice using the security systems that are built into Inductive. We've automated things with like Let's Encrypt and stuff like that to automate the facilitation of having a good TLS cert program on. And then also the two-factor authentication, especially for mobile devices. We love the Perspective module. We have a lot of customers that have remote access. And now that they have a lot of these projects in the cloud hosted on AWS and Azure and things like that, what we're finding is being able to support two-factor authentication model and the federated identity model has really helped them feel comfortable in implementing mobile solutions, which in prior past, they were a little bit leery about those things, having that data pass over internet-based connections. Having the capabilities, the TLS built in, having the capabilities of true certs and the two-factor authentication with federated identity model, they feel comfortable moving forward with those solutions, and those are the solutions we like to provide.
Thanks, Mo. Sam, how are you, practical advice to customers? How are you approaching these challenges of security with your customer base?
Yeah, I mean, my number one recommendation is always to make sure that, security is important, and we want to make sure that we are designing with that in mind, but that the idea of practical use of the system needs to go hand in hand with that. You can design the most secure system that anyone has ever seen, but if someone needs to take a USB stick and go plug it into a server somewhere else just to do their job every day, well, then you've just instantly defeated the purpose of the secure system that you designed. So practical security is a reality that we can all get to, and we can have both worlds. We can have a system that is both usable and properly secure to suit our needs, but we need to design the overall encompassing system with those two principles in mind to get it done.
Thanks, Sam. So we're going to move to another topic here, but I did say at the outset we had a lot of ground to cover, so we're going to move into mobile. Of course, we had to be talking about mobile technologies today. As really the use of the desktop computers decreased, mobile devices have become the most used form of technology. In fact, in 2016, mobile devices surpassed personal computers as the dominant computing device in the world. And in 2019, we have over 5 billion mobile phone users. That said, mobile SCADA is not without challenges. Many mobile solutions that have been introduced in the marketplace have not been truly mobile first. They're often challenging to design with and clunky, and additionally, they bring control systems onto mobile screens that can lead to some user issues. So as a result, these technologies can slow down rather than speed up control system growth. But the Ignition Perspective module was released this April. You mentioned it in the last comments there, and working with your customers. It's a completely mobile way of interacting with your control systems. It allows you to leverage technology like built-in cameras, GPS, and even lets you respond to alarms on your mobile device. So Perspective is a powerful visualization tool, makes it simple to build screens that fit to mobile, tablet, desktop, or whatever screen you might be using. So using mobile technology on the plant floor is not only possible, but streamlined and intuitive, because Perspective is HTML5 and CSS3 compliant. So that being said, I think I would like to stop talking about it and let Travis take over and show you a short demo of the power of Perspective. Travis?
All right. So we came out with Ignition A in Perspective really to solve the problem of getting data to more people. Every device nowadays has a browser. And with that, we can simply type in an IP address or host name, and we can get to an application where we can start taking advantage of all that. But having the same tried and true security standards that are there with any cloud application that we go to today that we use in our personal life. And that's really what Perspective is all about. So to give you a sense of that, here I'm going to Chrome, and we have a demo project located at demo.inductiveautomation.com. And so that's where I'm at, already on that page. And as you can see, it's HTTPS, so we're using a secure socket connection. And we have a trusted certificate up here, and that's just what we would have if we went to any web page. If we were logging to our bank, we'd want that same type of security. And so here we're seeing the application. This was built using the Ignition Designer, that is now a pure web native HTML5 CSS application. And we can go over here and tour various features of it, as well as we have a couple of vertical applications, and we're going to expand on more of those. People can see different uses of what you can build with this module. As an example here, if I look at this real-time status control, this HMI screen here, I've got a good example of an HMI. We have the ability to do control and all of that. We could tie this to a federated identity provider, so we can have somebody log in through a standard system that everybody's using within the organization that supports single sign-on and multi-factor authentication, so we can validate who that user is for various actions like that. And we can lock things down based on that. So you can see here's a good screen that shows a couple different ways of looking at data. Now, another important part about Perspective is that it is built to be mobile responsive. So I'm looking at it here on a desktop, but I may look at this on my phone or a tablet, and I want the view to be optimized for that medium, for that experience. So here, if I switch it from a desktop and I go and look at it, what it would look like on a phone, you're going to see a different view of that. I can still get all the relevant information. I can still do my control, do all of that, but I get a more optimized view for the phone. And the same experience would be there for a tablet. And every part of the system was built that way. And as Don was saying, we're able to take advantage of smartphones and tablets in a much more native way. We have native apps for iOS and Android, and with those native apps, it gets access to all the amazing sensors that phones have. I mean, they're incredible pieces of technology. So you got GPS, they got accelerometers, they got cameras, they got Bluetooth, all these things that we want to be able to tap into. And right now we tap into the GPS and the camera, scanning barcodes, and the accelerometer. And so think of the applications that can come out of that. If I had GPS, I could use that to switch my screen depending on where I'm at in the facility. I could tag my location if I had changed set points. I could do geofencing. I can use that for a lot of really cool practical purposes, as well as the camera. I could take that to scan a barcode. This is one that a lot of customers want to do. Put barcodes out there, take a picture or scan that barcode, get the information about the machine, switch to a particular area of the application, or use it for remote troubleshooting, whatever it might be. These are things that really allow a lot of value with the system. So Perspective is really about, having, by using modern browsers here, which everything has, heck, my TV now, or my refrigerator now has a modern browser. I can go look at the Perspective application on that. And so we have a lot of ways we can get data to people and really take advantage of all the data we're bringing in from the OT level. So I would encourage you guys to go take a look at the demo project. The entire thing was built, again, mobile responsive, so you can see how all that works. Take advantage of features for the web, touch and gestures and components that are built specifically for the web, and just layouts and things you can do that are very conducive for that environment. So it really allows you to take advantage a lot more of that data.
Thanks, Travis. Totally appreciate that. Now let's get a little context on that from the mobile SCADA challenges and how you guys are addressing them as panelists, and the shift toward mobile technology, how it's impacting the automation industry. So with that, Chris, why don't you give some comments on that from your perspective with Vertec?
I am so excited about this. This was actually the #1 feature that I've been waiting for years.
Yeah, you've been talking about it for a long time, Chris. I do remember that.
So no longer do we have to be like, you can use a tablet if it's Windows-based, and you could run the base ignition project. Now we just say any phone, any tablet, no big deal. And so there's 2 very common requests that we've even been getting this year that we've already put into place. And so one of them has been around mobile forms. And so a lot of times, we're not fighting or competing against other technologies. We're fighting against paper and Excel. And so simply taking like a daily rounds form on a wastewater treatment plant or somewhere else where they have a lot of field walks or maintenance walks, and converting that from paper into Perspective that they could be filling it out. We put QR codes out on a lot of the devices. So they'll walk up, they'll scan in, and then they'll fill out notes or select from drop downs about that equipment. Saves it as a form, saves it to the database, and it completely erases paper that goes into a cabinet somewhere. The other one that's very common is if you put in an MES system, people are just dying for access on their mobile phones. It's how they work these days. And so an OEE dashboard that's looking at all of your lines across the plant and gives you a quick viewpoint of what's running, what's stopped, what's down, what product is on the line, what quantity are we at of the target, and what's the OEE score. Very simple, extremely effective for upper management.
That's great. Thanks for your comments on that. How about you, JC, from the perspective of you guys at Raceline?
Yeah, I think Travis mentioned the word earlier, holistic. It's interesting how culture affects the IoT world. I don't think anybody was using the word holistic in discussions on SCADA or MES a few years ago. but that's an indication of how culture affects our workplace, and mobile has affected our workplace in the same way. Raceline, we've had to do a fundamental shift into thinking PCs and desktops and servers first. Now we think mobile first. And like Chris, we are very pleased that the solution is now available.
Thanks, JC. Moving beyond mobile, another trend that used to be futuristic pipe dream is now becoming reality for industrial automation, machine learning. By starting with a simple model, you can build out predictive analytics, that can help companies anticipate operational needs and progress. While machine learning is not easy to implement, it can be possible to start building a system that can take advantage of it and leverage it. The biggest thing you need for machine learning, won't surprise you, is data, lots and lots of data. It's important to remember that data must be of high quality also to ensure that the results are accurate. Ignition actually is a great machine learning asset because it provides you with all the data you need to start working with a model, and it connects to machine learning platforms like AWS Greengrass and Azure. Travis, I'd love to hear a little additional thoughts from you on how you see Ignition and machine learning working well together.
I think I think they work really, really well together. I mean, Ignition has access to all that plant floor data, and as we talked about before, all those standardization and single source truth and getting that data up, getting access to all that data is all incredibly important, and we need to have a lot of data for machine learning. And so these tools exist, whether it's in Azure or AWS, and we can start taking advantage of them. But there's a caution. You really have to know a lot about machine learning, the algorithms. You have to know a lot about the process. You have to really put those two together to take advantage of it. But the opportunities are vast. I mean, to be able to do predictive, like to predict machine failures or forecast, into the future, or to be able to tune our process, finally tune it based on these models. Those are all really cool things that we can actually approach. And so Ignition, having the data interplaying or talking to these systems, allows customers to take advantage of that.
That's great. That's great. So as you guys look at it in terms of ways you're using it, Sam, give me your thoughts on machine learning and how it's becoming a reality or not with your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So this ties a lot back into one of my early points around not trying to jump too far ahead in the maturity curve. It's surprising the amount of people that kind of come sometimes and they're really excited about the idea of using machine learning and analytics, but then you go onto the shop floor and everyone's still writing things down on paper and nothing's actually there on a network. So it really is making sure, it's an excellent end goal to have, but it's not something that you can just immediately jump to and flip a switch on if you haven't had the preceding steps fleshed out. You need well-connected, validated, and lots of data to make things like machine learning happen. So it's a part of the process, and I think that making sure that you have those foundational steps each provide value in their own merit and help you to get to some of these larger, big concept ideas like machine learning and analytics. Thanks,
Sam. Mo, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, for us, it's, on the machine learning side, the data and the data integrity become very important. And then the rate in which you can get the data. A lot of times, data on the edge or data, from plant to plant, when you bring all this disparate information in, you have to be able to make sure that that data is, sometimes you're looking at it at pull rates at 50 milliseconds and things like that to really get studies on how well a PID loop is processing and things like that. So having edge technologies and then having the ability to have the data integrity and store and forward and things that help get that data in so that they can use that data, but also third-party systems. I talked about this earlier. We see a lot of analytical companies, deep analytic companies that use, all kinds of reporting tools. They need that data, but you can't impede the performance of the production network. So having capabilities to use publish, subscribe models where you can decouple these different disparate locations and all this data coming in, but still extract that data at the same time without impeding on production makes it very possible for machine learning applications. Whereas before, people were too afraid to have a 50 millisecond polling device in the same network that they had their production device and not be able to segregate and decouple that data where it could be utilized. Now that's more of a reality. So you see a lot more machine learning applications taking place.
Thanks, Mo. Appreciate both you guys' comments on that. As I listen to just the topics that we've been covering in the last 45 minutes, it strikes me that, if we were having this, maybe even just a half a dozen years ago, having this call, these topics would not be covered in any way the way they are right now. And what it really begs the question on is, what are the required changing skills for integrators to be successful in this market? They're quickly evolving as technology is rapidly developing. So I think it's really important. Integrators must be knowledgeable about topics like the ones we discussed today: IIoT, mobile, cloud security, digital transformation, machine learning, etc. So the list goes on. Not only that, but they have to start working with those technologies quickly and dealing with the world, of course, of legacy and install base, because we don't live in a greenfield world, we live in a brownfield world. So finally, they have to do all this while training the next generation of engineers. So dramatically different technology backgrounds come with these folks, different experiences than the past generations. So if you'd maybe even just make a couple of quick comments as we get towards the end here about the changing skills for integrators. I'm going to ask each of you to make a quick comment on that, and then we'll kind of go into maybe some final question. But JC, how about you first?
Well, one thing that hasn't changed on integrator level, you look for somebody with a broad skill set, and if they don't already have that, you try to teach that. We're having to spend more time teaching actually the newer generation some of the legacy systems, because training courses aren't online for that type of information. But I would my advice for students is to try to understand that. Not put boundaries on your ideas, and that's the kind of people we try to look for here.
Thanks, JC. Sam?
Yeah, I mean, recruiting and maintaining new talent is certainly a difficulty for both systems integrators, but also for a lot of our customers, especially on the operations front, right? You usually have people that have 30 years of tenure, and then you have a couple of people with 5, maybe 10 years of tenure if you're lucky, but there is a pretty big gap there, and trying to find those new people to fill that gap has always been a problem. So, one of the things I always say is that I'm not a interior designer, but when I walk into a building that hasn't been refreshed from the 80s or 90s, I know that, right? And the same thing happens for people, even if they're not experts, as they walk into these plant floors. If it doesn't look modern, if it doesn't feel the right way and kind of comply with modern standards, people identify that really quickly, and it becomes really hard to maintain young talent that way. So we look for people that can design with those principles in mind and keep touch interfaces in mind and understand kind of the new modern landscape and design to those principles as well, because it just helps buy in across the system.
Thanks so much. How about you, Chris?
So traditional automation, still wildly important, but it's not the hottest thing that we are hiring. I see the trend going more towards people that have scripting experience and heavy database experience. And the truly hot things is when you come across somebody that has good UX design, that's an immediate hire. And somebody that has MES skills, that too is an immediate hire. And so if there was something to chase after in school or learn, going through Inductive University, following up with all the MES training, those are important skills that we look for when hiring.
Thanks, Chris. Mo?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of reverse the conversation a bit. I think one of the things that we look at is that, like with the Inductive platform, with open scripting models like Python, with the ability to easily connect devices with a nice, portal, web-based portal to run driver sets like Allen Bradley Protocol, Siemens, Modbus, and the way that you guys address Modbus setups, it helps us work with younger engineers that don't have the legacy SCADA system experience. And so we're able to find kind of younger engineers that can kind of play in the space, and then support for these new protocols like MQTT. We joked around the other day how we talked to some younger, engineers that had never even heard of some of the legacy protocols, but you mentioned Facebook and Raspberry Pis and MQTT, and they all raised their hand. So I see the supporting technology being really important to help with new engineers coming into the business like Inductive does.
Thanks, Mo. With the time that we have left here, I'm going to ask you guys a final question. You got a minute to share your views on enthusiasm. I know when Steve Heckman, our CEO, started getting involved with developing the Ignition platform, he came with a quarter of a century of experience as a systems integrator, and that was really his passion, was to make this platform something that system integrators would like. His comment many times was, "It's just nice to see integration become fun again." So not to be corny about that, but I have my question to you is, are you optimistic about the future? What makes things fun and exciting about the work that you do? JC?
real quick, the tools continue to be able to make us deliver on any ideas that our guys have or our customers have.
That's great. Thanks, JC. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the software is really caught up to what we expect just out of more modern software platforms that's hit the industrial world today in a way that it hasn't in the past. A lot of our work is around working with legacy systems and bringing them into the modern era. And I think that the software side of things, especially through products like Inductive, has really finally caught up and made that exciting again.
Thanks, Sam. How about you, Mo?
I totally dig it. Lots of fun. I've automated my sprinkler system with Ignition just to show you how interesting and fun it can be.
I know I only gave you a minute to answer, but I do have to comment that there's several years ago, Mo brought a robot to the keynote, and Travis had it. I think it's named Travis, isn't it? The robot's named Travis. But anyway, Travis the robot walked out on stage to Travis the person, and it was quite a little hit. And Mo just put that together in his garage. So you must be having some fun, Mo.
Always.
Yeah, that's great. How about you, Chris?
It feels like a golden era, and it is really fun to be involved with it. And so I think it's still early adoption phase for a lot of our customers in terms of either machine learning or connecting all the islands. And so the technology is finally there, and the desire is increasing from all the customers. And so I'm looking forward to exactly where this goes.
Thanks, Chris. I do want to say, too, as we're kind of coming into our wrap up here, that I really appreciate all four of you and your organizations allowing you to have the time to be with us today and share some of your perspectives as you've evolved over the years in working with Ignition. Since there are also probably some people who are new to Ignition, you can go to it, try it out, download it. It takes 3 minutes, fully functional, and you can learn about it yourself. If you want to learn more, go to Inductive University. There's 550, 600 videos there on every aspect of using Ignition. It's 100% free. Also, docs.inductiveautomation.com. You can go there for our user manual. It's also available. Everything that we're doing across this area is to try and do knowledge transfer so it makes it easy for you to take the product and put it into use for your customers. We totally appreciate everyone's participation and attention today, and have a great day. We are concluded.